Describe your feelings about Marco Rubio voting against the Ukraine aid package.
He's such a piece of
It's wild to think we're coming to a place where Marco Rubio could be a real contender for Trump's VP, but that's what Caputo thinks, and that's why Marco voted.
He's going to move. They're going to make him move.
Yeah, they re-register somewhere
That'd
else.
be the biggest power move ever.
The only thing that would make me have a single iota of a positive feeling towards Donald Trump that I could imagine would be for Donald Trump to get him to the final two, get him to resign and move, and then choose somebody else. I mean, that would really
so good.
That would almost be enough to win me over. I mean, that the humiliation of Marco at that level is really appetizing. That's all.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next level. Stop. Don't you do that. Don't you do that, you two. This is JVL. It actually is JVL, and I'm here with my two best friends who are mocking my pain, Sarah Longwell and Tim Miller of the Bulwark. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm here playing hurt. We're going to do this show anyway.
This voice is not real. How are we doing this show? This is an audio. This is an audio medium podcast.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's also video. So what we could do is I could get a little whiteboard, a little dry erase board, and I could just write all my thoughts on them and hold them up to the camera so you guys could read them. We could do that if you want to do it that way.
It's like someone punched you in the throat.
That's how
recovered.
It feels, actually. It doesn't feel great.
Okay.
Tim, I know this is real because I've heard this, but he does this. Sometimes on the secret pod, when he's sick, he's like this. It's his Phoebe voice.
It's what the body does.
Yeah.
It's just a thing the body does.
Okay, well, JV, I'll save your economy of words from you today. So let's just move forward.
All right. The Trump trial, David Pecker has been on the stand this week, and something amusing here, Mr. Miller. Would you like to share it with the
David
class?
Pecker and that voice. I don't know. There's something about that voice saying Pecker. I don't know. Sorry.
Little Ethel Merman action. So I've written about this today in the newsletter because I write even when I'm sick too, and there's a very Nazi thing about this. There's a guy, I'm forgetting his name, but he was the guy who convinced a bunch of Nazi fundraisers to buy a tabloid newspaper in Munich and let them turn it into the house organ of the Nazi Party. They put him as publisher of it. Dietrich Eckart, I think was his name. And that's basically what David Pecker is. And I don't know about you guys. This is something totally new in American politics. We've never had... we've had house organs like the Daily Worker, but they were admittedly house organs. I mean, they said, the official newspaper of the Communist Party USA. They didn't hide. And to have an actual propaganda outlet taking its orders from Donald Trump on a day-to-day, story-by-story basis and obscuring that from people, this is fascist shit.
Okay, so we went right to Nazis, but that's okay. I don't know about what happened in Germany with Dietrich, but I will say what's interesting about this is, so this is from 2016, and Pecker's in the courtroom saying this this is how it worked. And there's a couple things about it that jump out at me that are super interesting. One is, I talk a lot about how Trump's celebrity made him unique, and I'm usually talking about it in the context of people had him in their homes. They felt like they had a personal relationship with him. But this is another way in which his celebrity really came into play, which is that he had been using channels like the National Enquirer for decades, right? To leak stuff about competitors, to build himself up. And so it's not even that it was there was no Trump administration at the time. If you look back at 2016 and think about it in the 2016 context, Trump was a tabloid candidate. And so that Trump won and that we find ourselves where we are now is actually the insane part. To me, it seems Trump was a scummy C-level celebrity that had been in the public consciousness for a long time in a tabloidy kind of way with his exploits. And so he had this relationship that he used to do scummy things that like felt outside of the normal political realm, which is why we never took them as seriously. Like I was looking back at the story that they did, not about Trump, because for Trump it was more like they were protecting him, but they were also writing negative pieces about his adversaries. And so there were a bunch of stories about Ted Cruz, and everybody remembers like the JFK, his father assassinated JFK, right? Some preposterous thing. But they also wrote about Cruz having 5 mistresses, which one of whom was Amanda Carpenter, our old colleague, right? Because she was his comms director at the time. And like, so Trump played a game that nobody was ready for, that nobody had dealt with in the past. And that, if it had just stayed as a dirty side tabloid, might not have mattered that much. But because a lot of the stuff ended up at the center of his campaign and he ultimately became the president, now it matters in a way that feels totally different than I think it felt in 2016. Does that make sense?
Yes, I know. I mean, so I lived through it in 2016. It does matter in a way now that's different, but 2016 was really fucking important. And so I don't know. I felt like really primed for this topic. I was coming on and being like, this is like, I don't think people understand how serious this is. And then JVL goes immediately to Nazi. So now I'm like, okay, this is really serious.
I'm sorry, but that's
really
just
serious.
That's the only comp. I mean, the only comp is the European movement in the fascist movement in the 1920s.
Right, but whatever paper they bought, I bet wasn't running stories that was like, Bat Boy lives again. The human boy who is a bat, whatever.
There's an idiocracy element to all of Donald Trump's fascistic tendencies, right? Like all of the comps are just like, there's some idiocracy elements to Nazism too, but like it's just slightly more idiocratic with Trump always and more just absurdist. But I concur with that. But look, I mean, this stuff, and obviously it roiled Amanda's life, for example, and many other women. Like these accusations that also just like, there was like Marco Rubio's love child, like there's certain things that we all just remember, right? Because they stuck more. The killed Kennedy, the Cruz's dad killed Kennedy element, and people are like, oh, they laughed at all this. And yeah, like there was a little bit of humor that went along with all this, but it also worked. Like it helped Donald Trump brand. Remember the crazy Ben Carson? Ben Carson almost killed somebody when he was a kid or whatever. Like all of this stuff, and it helped Donald Trump level the playing field for himself because he had this tawdry history, right? And so the National Enquirer kind of muddied the waters about all this. So there were real personal ramifications for people. It was not akin to anything. There was somebody on, just on 2 things about whether it's akin to anything. Jim mentioned there hasn't been anything like this in politics. Schwarzenegger, I think, also did a catch and kill thing. So the catch and kill element, there maybe are a couple other of examples. But the element of this that was testified to yesterday, which I think is a new piece of information, because we knew that Cohen was involved in all this. We knew that everybody was involved. But was that David Pecker was sending the articles to Cohen. Like Cohen was, before they published, like they were brainstorming the articles. And then they all they were editing. The campaign was literally editing the articles. Like there is nothing like this. Somebody, Mark Bodnick, who's a big fan of the Bulwark, replied to us. His daughter Maya writes sometimes for Matt Iglesias' thing. She's awesome, and was like, well, I don't know. Isn't this kind of akin to scummy Oppo Republican tactics? Historically, like the McCain baby Bush thing. And my response to that is somebody that like ran a Republican Oppo firm is like, no, this is a total category difference. The fact that you mention the Bush, claiming that McCain had a black baby thing as a comp is because that was so outlandish, right? Like, and there was so much outrage over that tactic, because it was beyond the pale, and there's been widespread condemnation of it. Like it was not standard to make up shit about your candidates, your opposition's sex life, your opposition's family members, your opposition's spouses, and work with tabloid outlets on it and have approval over the language that came out and brainstorm with them as if they're like an arm of the campaign. Like that is not, no. Like it is extreme. It was bad behavior and extreme. It's also disgusting. Like the real world implications on people that were just caught in the shrapnel of this. and like that Michael Cohen was doing this is extremely gross, and I'm glad he's going to testify against Trump and he's found God or whatever. But like it was even within the bounds of like extreme Lee Atwater-ish, Karl Rovian Republican tactics. This was far beyond, what was commonplace tactical behavior.
And can I just add to this? So like when you say like it's so different, right? It was different in 2016. But the fact is, if you go through the text messages after January 6th, it is Laura Ingraham and it is a bunch of Fox News hosts who are texting with members, with Mark Meadows, being like, you got to tell him this. Like the amount to which Trump graduated from these tabloids to more conservative media outlets that were much less tabloidy, like Fox News has its obviously, Fox News, we don't take it seriously as like a news outlet. However, it is much more mainstream than the Inquirer was. And like he now has the same relationship. Like that was something about Trump that I think people didn't see coming was he knew how to build these relationships with the press and demand things that like normal political operatives wouldn't do because we don't engage with the press the way that Trump had gotten used to engaging with the press.
Right. I would feel like if somebody came to me, a candidate came to me back when I was doing oppo work, was like, hey, I got a relationship with David Pecker. I want you to call him and we're going to work on a story together, smearing the opposite candidate. I guess I can't know exactly what I would have done in that situation. Maybe I would have been more inclined to consider it earlier in my career for advancement purposes. But like, I think certainly by the time I got to Jeb's campaign, I would have thought to myself, absolutely not. Like no. The idea, A, it's wrong, but B, just the practical risk of this. Like, what if Pecker turns on me? Mm-hmm. And like a story, and the story comes out that Jeb's campaign was creating fake news, attacking their opponent's family. I mean, that's like a campaign-ending level scandal for normal type candidates.
I just want to level set here so that people who haven't followed the testimony can understand what we mean when we say things are manufactured. So, for instance, the Rafael Cruz killed JFK thing. That originates between a conversation between David Pecker and Michael Cohen. Presumably, it comes from Trump because this is, it's like The Wire, right? The guy who holds the drugs never also touches the money. And so Pecker sits down with his editor and their archivist, and they just get out photos and start mashing them up to create a picture. So this is when it's not a case where like, well, somewhere there was a little bit of a germ of truth and then they exaggerate it, or it's just disinformation. And that's why I said there is no, Sarah, you said that the old Munich Observer wasn't running, rat
I don't
aliens.
know. I didn't read the Munich Observer, but
well, no. But what they would do is they would do stories like 2 Jewish teenagers turn into bats, right?
Oh.
Because it was an anti-Semitic paper, and but there's no real difference between that and saying that Rafael Cruz was working with Lee Harvey Oswald. Like it's just whole cloth fabrication, and this guy, David Pecker,
It's trash.
It's bad. An absolute trash human being.
And responsible. Again, in these close elections, like all this stuff mattered. Like all this stuff mattered on the margins. And the fact then that Cruz and Carson and Rubio, we'll get back around to little Marco, but like are all just whatever. Like the type of guy that would that's just normal ball. I mean, Barack Obama one time said that Barack Obama's super PAC said that Mitt Romney was a killer one time, and so whatever, even Steven.
No, but they didn't think that at the time. Like this is what's crazy about this story is it's re-upping a time that now we have so much more context for. So like I was looking at one of these stories and like they're quoting Roger Stone. Well, if I was reading that story back in 2016, I have no idea who Roger Stone is. I don't have any context for Roger Stone. Now I have a tremendous amount of context for Roger Stone. And like back then, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz remember Ted Cruz held that press conference. He was like, I want to tell you what I really think about Donald Trump. He is a liar and a con man and a despicable human being. That's how they felt during this period of time, right? They were then later right? And this is, I don't know who I was talking to, but they were kind of asking me to like draw a bright line between the sort of normal elements of the Republican Party and the Trumpy elements. And I was like, that's not it anymore. There's no line, because it's like, it's all shades, and it's like a wave of an ocean that slowly overtook something that now those guys who took great umbrage to this and saw it as dirty pool and disgusting and despicable tactics, like now they're fine with it, right? Like they've just frog, boiling water, whatever, right? They now, whether it's because they were scared of Trump or because it was, if you can't beat them, join them, like whatever the psychological effects were that slowly took hold of many of the people in the Republican Party. This wasn't how they acted at the time. It is how they act now.
Well, this is Ted Cruz when he did his thing. He specifically fingered David Pecker. He was like, Donald Trump is got this guy he's been friends with for years. They make this stuff up. And so Philip Bump calls up the Cruz office yesterday. This is a chance for them to spike the football. Ted Cruz has been utterly and completely vindicated about this guy who lied about his own father. And Cruz's response is,
and himself, and his wife, whether he's faithful to his wife.
Is, that's ancient history. I don't want to talk about the past. I don't understand how you live with yourself. Like I genuinely don't understand how a man could get up in the morning and look at himself in the mirror.
To be fair, the idea that 5 women would sleep with Ted Cruz, he probably liked that story, right? Like, because what are the chances? 0.
I know. I mean, the more credible stories about Ted Cruz related to his sex life are the ones that like his roommate leaked, back during that campaign, about how he'd like come home and Ted Cruz would be alone watching porn with like a bucket of fried chicken in the living room. That's the real Ted Cruz.
All right. Other news from today, Axios reported that Don and Eric are going to be the loyalty czars in the transition team for Trump 2025. And there is a lot of this that I think is interesting. But the most interesting detail in it is that they will not be officially part of the transition team, which means that Trump is going to set up an unaccountable superstructure outside of the actual structure for his presidential transition. And I don't know what to say except that this is gangster government. Like this is just straight up mafia stuff. And again, I don't know how anybody could look at all this and say, yeah, well, we could go with the guy who passed infrastructure and got the TikTok ban done and got the aid to Ukraine, and or we could go with this other dude who's going to put his boys in charge of loyalty.
Yeah, well, I guess we got Uday and Kusei in charge of this outside of the campaign. That's the other thing. It's not just like a super strike. I mean, it's like it's the family, Right. It's like La Cosa Nostra is coming in, and it's like, well, okay, if we feel like somebody we might not be able to trust, or we don't like, or whatever, we can just axe them. And it is similar in a way to a story I've told in the podcast before about my friend who was working at the RNC who got a call from Jared Kushner. I was like, is everything okay? And it's the same setup, but now, they've learned a thing or two from 2024. The other interesting part of this story I thought was that they're brought in as loyalty czars, monitoring like the rhino cucks and the people that might want to do the right thing and follow the rule of law, etc. We got to make sure we've got eyes on them. But there's another group that they got to make sure they got eyes on, which are the ideologues that might be doing something to hurt Donald Trump's, reputation. Like Trump, everybody knows Trump doesn't care about most of this shit, right? Like Trump will enact some of the far right stuff on immigration and the deportation elements, the changes to the DOJ to target enemies. But, once you get some weirdo from Claremont in there that's like, making policy proposals that get put on white papers for Project 2025 that are all of a sudden in the newspaper that somebody prints out for Donald Trump and shows to him. And he's like, I don't agree with this weird policy about birth control or whatever other random thing.
Yeah, can't trust Bronze Age pervert. He might go wrong.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so they've got to have eyes on those people, because I think that it shows that as dangerous and as scary as Project 2025 is, the Trump people who are mafiosos and want to keep it in the family are like, wait a minute, okay, why are these Poindexters on K Street, creating bad news for us? And like, why and why do they think that they're gonna have veto power over who is at the Department of Commerce? Like, I might want one of my business buddies who gives me money to be in charge of the FTC. I don't want some ideologue that has really strong views about regulatory policy. Donald Trump doesn't care about that. Like, this, it's just going to be pure graft. So, like, he's both of these things at once, right? He has some very dangerous, extreme fascistic policy inclinations, but he also wants to have handouts for his buddies and doesn't care that much about some of the true con ideological stuff, and that is corrupt and dangerous and both those things at the same time. But it's like different than what, the biggest Mussolini lover at the Heritage Foundation would want from the government, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and let's stipulate the dangerousness of it so that I can talk about the fun side of this. Right.
Sure.
Let me give you
very dangerous, very scary.
But
I'll agree.
Here's the bright spot. If you're the Heritage Foundation and Claremont or a bunch of the other sort of parts of old Washington that basically fired everybody that was not on board with supporting sort of MAGA policies. And because it says in the piece, right, it's like specifically Heritage, which has sort of said that they're running the transition officially, that annoyed Trump. What do you mean they're running the transition? I'd tell them they were running the transition. Right. But here's what's great. You sold out everything. All these groups sold out everything so that they could, when Donald Trump gets in, say that they're at the table. They're driving the bus. This guy doesn't care about policy, so we're all over it. And if they get shut out because Donald Trump doesn't care about their political ideological fetishes and instead is looking for the Make America Great Again Institute, which I believe is a real thing now, like the MAGA think tanks that have come into fruition since 2020 for the old Trump folks to basically have their own I don't want to call them think tanks because I don't think they're thinking about anything, but like for the people to prove their allegiance, right, there are now MAGA identified structures with the specific blessing of Donald Trump, and for the power to get handed over to them, and for all these people who've sacrificed and traded away everything and made all these Faustian bargains to get shut out, there's something about that I find joyful.
Yeah.
Well,
we
like
want
Mike
loyalty
Pence,
tanks,
right,
Trump tanks.
What, JBO?
It's like Mike Pence.
Yeah.
Mike Pence signed on because Trump needed to get the evangelicals, but then the evangelicals were with him, so he didn't need Mike Pence anymore.
Yeah.
The Heritage and those guys are going to find out that all of their donors who send them, $250 a year, those people are all with Trump, and Trump doesn't need the Heritage Foundation to vouch for him anymore.
Yeah. They also don't even need the policy sections. And I was talking to I don't want to get this person in trouble. I was talking to somebody who used to be at one of these think tanks, and they're like, during the Trump years, like they were arguing that we should be doubling down on research and policy research, and we should be coming up with a new MAGA agenda with ideas and initiatives, and we should be spending time on that. And this person ended up becoming out of favor inside that think tank because that's not the business that Trump is in, that these people are in. And like the only thing that you're doing by putting out a white paper with a lot of ideas and initiatives is you're just sticking your head up out, you're the hamster sticking your head up and risking that you're going to get whacked, right? Because somebody's going to take that paper and print it out and hand it to Donald Trump on the golf cart and be like, look at these assholes that say they're speaking for you in this one sentence here. That's not you. You don't like that. And so the think tanks just become like gathering spaces for dinners and various galas and endorsements of Donald Trump.
Endorsements of Donald Trump, because that's the key, right? So I come out of this think tank space, right? Conservative Inc. That was my like my upbringing. And the point of it is for there to be this ecosystem so that when a Republican president comes in, you've already got the stuff, the infrastructure. A lot of these people, they come into your administration. They've been working in the off years to develop plans to push forward. It is about policies. And the thing is that Trump has reversed that and the reason that there are now MAGA think tanks is that the goal now is not to have affirmative policies that Trump can adopt when he becomes power. It is reversed. It is that Trump is going to say whatever the hell Trump says, and a bunch of people are going to scramble to figure out how to backfill and make the intellectual case for whatever it is he wants to do.
Bingo. We've got
Tim, do you want to give us a word from our sponsor?
We do have a word from our sponsor, and JVL was going to share it, but we were a little bit concerned that the sponsor was not looking to be endorsed by Bane from the Batman movies. Our sponsor today is Rhone Apparel. Do you want to look good without having to think about it? Then you need a wardrobe from Rhone. Their men's clothing are versatile, durable, refined, easy to style, and help you exude confidence effortlessly in a wide range of social and professional events. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Their commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and truly versatile set of products known to man. They have products for every occasion. We're talking about the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, polos, and blazers. They look great as individual pieces and work seamlessly together. Rhone's signature 4-way stretch fabric is breathable, flexible, and works everywhere from your commute to work to the 19th hole. It's time for unparalleled confidence without all the hassle. Rhone's commuter collection features wrinkle-free technology and is 100% machine washable. Looking good is that easy. Treated with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology for more wears between washes. You'll be fresh and clean all day long, college students. So long, goodbye, lingering odors. I got to tell you, if you want to just understand the different contexts that you can wear these Rhone shirts in, I wore the Rhone dress shirt while officiating a wedding couple weeks ago. I wore officiating the wedding. I looked nice. You can see it on my Instagram. I looked fresh. I then wore it on the dance floor. I was sweating, but it didn't leave any lingering odors. And I also wear it sitting around the house, podcasting. From podcasting to wedding officiating, that's versatility. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone, RHONE.com/thenextlevel and use promo code thenextlevel to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/thenextlevel and use code thenextlevel. It's time to find your corner office comfort.
You know, I have a corner office. Do they make women's clothes, or is this just for dudes?
They're working on it. Well, you're a lesbian, so you could wear probably from the men's collection if you wanted.
I don't know if you know this, but lesbians still have certain
anatomical
features.
features.
The stuff that fits you is not going to fit me. Hips.
That's a good point.
And our bodies are. Don't you listen to the conservatives? Men and
what
women.
What about a quarter
are
zip though?
different.
You could wear a quarter zip.
Yeah, but they're never. Those aren't cut right. They're not cut right for the female. It's not. Just make a women's line if they're so good. I like to be fresh. I officiate weddings.
You do?
Yeah, you're gonna have to mute. You're gonna have to bleep the part where I said the B word. Yeah.
Wow,
we're gonna have to bleep the part where you said
the greatest endorsement we've ever done. We got a poll a few days ago. I think it was Marist showing Biden ahead in the 5-way race. Right, tied with Trump, I think, head to head, but then ahead 5-way, because as I believe all three of us have said for months now, despite the conventional wisdom, RFK will take from Trump to the extent he takes disproportionately. Who would like to
have we
spike
all
the
said that?
football? Well,
JDL has said that.
I'm still undecided. And can I just say on this, I have a comment both on this and just on the election in general from some of the feedback that we get from people. I understand some people are tuning into a political podcast like this and they're like, we want you to tell me exactly what's going to happen in 6 months. And I don't know why you're saying some people tell me Donald Trump's definitely going to lose. Joe Biden's definitely going to lose. I'm like, I was so wrong in 2016. I was so wrong. And I think that the value of what we're doing is trying to, as JVL says, see around corners, trying to look at threats. This is why Sarah's doing the focus groups. And there's probabilities. There are things you can look at and say what you think based on the data. But I don't want to be blindsided again. So I'm not going to go into this stuff fully assured. I've changed my mind on the RFK thing twice. Initially, I thought he was definitely going to hurt Trump. Then I started to change my mind and think he's going to hurt Biden because of black voters in particular, but also younger voters and some other demos. And now I'm starting to flip back to the JVL position that he's going to hurt Trump. But I don't think it's 100% guarantee. I'm glad that my friend Liz Smith is out there leading this charge for the Democrats, because I think that there are some threats out there. And I think that the core point that JVL makes that I agree with is the inner circle of RFK Jr. support is certainly going to take from Trump. Whatever that is, the first 3%, 4%, 5%, like the core is going to be mostly people that would have not voted or voted for Trump, a handful of Bidens. I think there's another ring out there of people that might use him as an off-ramp because of Gaza, because of inflation, because Biden's old, whatever. They're lower info voters. We see this in all the polls. There's some lower info voters that are traditionally in the Democratic demos. And so I'm worried about that, and those people got to be communicated to. And so the new polls have started to indicate that this is moving, but I think that vigilance is required when it comes to RFK Jr. That's my take.
So, and my take is similar but different. So if you gave me the choice to have RFK in this race or out of this race, I would 100% choose out of this race. Okay? Because he's an unknown quantity, right? You want Biden to run head to head with Trump, right? Because Trump's ceiling seems to be this hard 46%. And so Joe Biden's got to claw everything to get up to 49%, because even there he needs to be 2 points over in order to win the electoral college. So, right, if you gave me the choice, I would want RFK out. I wouldn't want him in this race. Unpredictable. Not a good, you don't want it. That said, if he's going to be in, and it looks like he's going to be in, then you take it as an opportunity. Sorry, you got lemons, you're going to make lemonade out of it. Now you're going to make lemonade out of it because there is an opportunity to say to more Trump voters, right? There's a lot about RFK that codes Trump, that codes MAGA. And if you listen to my podcast with Estad Herndon, which is a really good one, I think, on RFK, where we talked to both Biden voters who are leaning toward RFK and Trump voters who are leaning toward RFK, you can see what it is about RFK that becomes this Rorschach test for voters, right? You can see on the left, they're like, well, he's a big environmentalist guy and he's younger than Biden. And I think Biden's too old and I'm mad at him for XYZ reason. And he's a Kennedy. And also, I don't know that much about him and I can't tell you the name of his vice presidential running mate. On the right, however, there was a much more hardened interest in the fact that Kennedy's name means that he is punching back against the libs. He's defying his family. He's going after Democrats. What do Republicans like more than anything else? Somebody of the libs who's hitting the libs, right? They love that. And so he's the one honest. They know he's sort of a Democrat. But you know who else was sort of a Democrat? Donald Trump was sort of a Democrat. If you took me back 10 years and said, hey, Sarah, here are your three candidates. They're RFK Jr., Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. I would say, where's the Republican? Who's the Republican in this race? But because of our scrambled political environment, RFK really does have the... And now, here's the thing. It's going to be gross. You know what? To pull RFK voters away from Donald Trump, think about all the gross messaging, right? Think about the how it's like, oh, Trump sold us out on the vaccine. Right. Trump is the MAGA establishment. Trump's not really pushing back against our enemies. We need somebody who's not a regular politician.
Trump
Donald
tacitly approved Mike Johnson on Ukraine.
That's right. And this is where RFK, can hurt Trump. And Trump, I think, has belatedly realized that this is the case. And this is a question of, but because one of the things that was so interesting to me in the focus group is like, there's also these just like weird horseshoe people who are like, I like RFK because he takes his supplements and wellness and testosterone levels in men are sliding. And you're like, okay. But like, and it's interesting. I was just doing a group of Arizona Trump voters who were really upset with Trump's position on abortion. Now, they weren't going to Biden. They were RFK curious. Why? Because RFK understands bodily autonomy. He understands that the government shouldn't tell you what to do with your body, whether it's abortion or whether it's what vaccine you put in it. I had not thought of that really, but like how they were seeing RFK. And so my point about the thing about Liz Smith, I think is really true, that like the idea of the analysis of like, who does he pull from right this minute is different from how do you mount a campaign to ensure that he takes more from Trump, because that is an opportunity. I'm not advising the things that I said as messaging, just by the way.
I am.
Sure. Okay. But I'm just saying that if he's going to be in, you do have to figure out, you can't just sit back and assume that he will take from Trump.
Yeah.
You do have to affirmatively figure out how to, and that fight's going to happen, right? The Republicans are going to try to make him pull from Dems and vice versa.
I mean, I stipulate all of that, you have to put in the work and et cetera, et cetera. But my foundational view of this was that Republicans looked at all of this and just overdetermined based on his name. Like, oh, Kennedy. So there's a vestigial longing for the Kennedy family in Democrats that'll take from Democrats. But the real answer is that he's the craziest son of a bitch in the race. And Joe Biden is not competing for the vote of people who want crazy. And Trump now has somebody competing for the vote of people who want a Rand Paul, right? Or who want a Donald Trump. And for those people whose goal is to get the craziest son of a bitch in the race and vote for him, there now is somebody else on the ballot who they could go to. And I'm telling you, keep a watch on the people in your neighborhoods and in your life who put up RFK Jr. flags and stuff over the next 4 months. They're going to all be the same type of people who normally would put up a MAGA flag or a QAnon flag or something.
Weird as. I agree with all that. I guess I just want to say we just can't forget the other group of people that are like David Puddy from Seinfeld. They're not looking for the craziest son of a bitch in the race. They just don't watch the news, and they just have their jaw agape, and they're whatever. They're into UFC, and they've used to be Democrats their whole life. They voted for Obama, whatever, blah blah blah, and now, anyway, I think that there is a category of low info voter in some Democratic demos that I worry about that might not have the RFK flag, but they might vote for him. So you got to make sure those people know that he's a lunatic.
Yeah, but again, and it doesn't have to be crazy son of a bitch in the race so much as it can be like the guy who's not the establishment. I say this, I knew that DeSantis was getting just shanked in the primary when voters started to describe him as he seems like a regular politician. Because for Republicans, that's like the worst thing you can say about somebody. And what they loved about Donald Trump is he didn't seem like a regular politician. And I think that Kennedy can steal some of Trump's thunder on the not a regular politician, because the longer Trump's in politics, the more there's sort of an opening for I don't know, now Trump's been in politics a long time.
All right. Move on. We got some legislation signed. Joe Biden has been the guy to force the Chi-Coms to sell TikTok. Am I the only person who looks around saying, hey, this is something we complained about the Chi-Coms with all 4 years under Trump, and like with infrastructure, Biden's the one who gets it done? Yay. Nothing? No, nobody.
Has anybody given? I don't know. I haven't been following my friend Mike Gallagher's Twitter feed that closely. Have we seen any attaboys? The fake China hawks out there on the right that they all butch themselves up by talking about how tough they're going to be on China.
We can't do Ukraine because we got to be prepared for a land war in China.
Tommy Cotton.
That's where we're, if China does a blockade of Taiwan, then we'll be willing to send the 92nd Airborne into Shanghai.
Yeah, Marco.
It passed remarkably with a remarkable number of votes, though.
Yeah, only 18 against.
Only 18. Wild. Is anybody giving Joe Biden credit for this? Bueller.
I don't know. It is wild how the politics shifted on. No. I know. It is crazy. Does anybody have a theory on why the politics of this shifted as quickly as it has? It just went from something that people were like, you can't do this, and Biden's not going to sign it. It's going to hurt him with young people.
Once Biden said he would sign it, that's what shifted the politics. Right? Biden said he would sign it, and then the Republicans passed it 50-0 at a conference, and that was it.
Yeah,
right?
I
It was
don't think.
game over.
Yeah, Mark Warner. Kind of, I was reading a long story on this because I was like you, sir. I'm like so confused at how this happened so quickly. And Warner, who's been working on this, said that it was like he would never have predicted it. I just think it was like one of those sausage making things where a confluence of events happened. And 'cause it also, we just should say, it wouldn't have happened if Mike Johnson wouldn't have set up these bills like this.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that there are a handful of people who will never give Joe Biden credit, who are in the Republican Party, who are in the legislature, who are genuinely China hawks, that genuinely wanted to do something on this, and that like this helped bring them on board for getting the very weak but half of the conference that Mike Johnson got for the package of things. I think that was part of the motivation. There was a backbench group of Republican congressmen that wanted this happening, and the national security, and some not backbench, actually the McCalls of the world, some of the people that lead the security subcommittees. So I think that was happening. And then I think that a lot of Democrats like weren't pushing this because they were like, we're for this, but like, shouldn't we have done this in 2021? Like, do we really want to do this right now? We got this risk, the kids in Gaza. And so I think there were some cautious Democrats that were like, okay, like we'll be for it if you're going to put this up, and Biden says he's going to sign it. Like, all right, well, I guess we'll be for it. It turns out. Then there was some other, like Maria Cantwell and others who had like specific criticisms of like things that they had to fix. But I think that's basically what happened. It was like Biden said before it. Mike Johnson was like, I want to put this in, and all of a sudden it was like, here we are. And it's pretty wild, like that in this year where we like expected nothing to happen. All of a sudden they passed this absolutely massive thing that could have very real like positive implications national security wise. Like the algorithm side of this thing has been very concerning. And like there's going to be a lot of lawsuits, and are they going to be able to resolve it this year before the election? Probably not. So can this CHICOM still, like, might the CHICOMs now retaliate? There's a lot of unknown, potentially unintended consequences here. But yeah, just another example. I was listening to UNAB on the dark side, JVL, just like another example of like Joe Biden just like getting something done during his time. And it's like, for various reasons, nobody wants to give him credit. Republicans can't give him credit because of the politics. Some of the Democrats are still a little nervous about the politics of this. They don't want to get out over their skis. And so it's just like happening.
I need to ask, though, why can't Republicans give him credit?
Okay,
we are perfectly happy to give Mike Johnson an enormous amount of credit, as we have done at the Bulwark every day for the last week, for doing the right thing and acting responsibly, right? I mean, we're all happy to give Mike Johnson credit. Why does the street only run one way?
Because the reason that so my theory on the reason the politics changed so fast is that Republicans were happy to pass it because they think it hurts Joe Biden, and Democrats were happy to pass it because it was the right thing to do. And that's the asymmetry where we live, right? So Democrats did it against political interest. And maybe it's because the Democrats weren't putting up as big a stink the way that Republicans do. Like, the reason we end up giving Mike Johnson credit is because he's very publicly dealing with this oppositional faction that's going to take his job away if he does anything. Whereas the Democrats are much more, Joe Biden said he would sign it, despite the fact that might be a political liability. So the rest of the Democrats are like, okay, we do need to do this for national security reasons. And Republicans, given the opportunity to both get what they wanted from a national security standpoint and also put it on Biden as a negative political thing, was a good deal for them.
I think that's a really astute point. I agree with that. Though I just want to say, I don't know that it's clear. It's not that clear in the data that it hurts Joe Biden. Like,
yeah,
there's
the fear, right?
Yeah, it's the fear that it could, right? Like, it's,
yeah,
and we're going to talk about this a little bit more on the daily tomorrow. But like, if you look at the numbers, there's some people that are going to be pissed about it, but overwhelmingly, people are generally speaking, people are sympathetic to this, to wanting to do this, or at least say they are to pollsters. So it'll be interesting how it plays out. I just want to say to Mike Johnson, by the way, JVL, like, it is insane. Like, I would. If maybe I'm missing it, I'm not watching Fox all day. If there's anybody out there that's complimenting Joe Biden, I don't know, Brett Baer, Guy Benson, I don't know, Steve Ducey. If there's somebody on the network that's like, Joe Biden really nailed it with this because he signed a bill that we want, like all of those issues, the national security pundits want all of them. Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, TikTok. They want all four of those items. If there's one person that's complimented Joe Biden on Fox, please send that to me. But I do want to say, I'm almost like a Twitter over Mike Johnson. Like Mike Johnson is out there. It's like, what's happening? He's apologizing to Joe Biden for rolling his eyes at him. You know, he's taking pictures with Ukrainian Christian activists and he's talking about doing the right thing and the responsibility of governance. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I'm not sure.
Why are we the
I
only
can't
ones who
describe
can
my
do
own
that?
feelings about Mike Johnson. They're making me uncomfortable. It's like when I started to like boys a little bit. I'm like,
All
wait
right,
a
well,
minute.
here's something that'll make you feel comfortable. Describe your feelings about Marco Rubio voting against the Ukraine aid package.
He's such a piece of shit.
Do you know what? This guy, so in an unreleased, not yet released, this is a teaser for the focus group that's not even coming this week because we did an abortion one that's really, really good with women in Arizona. But down the line, we've got one with Caputo, our Florida man, resident Florida man. He just says Marco is like in the top 2 right now for VP, and that explains his vote. Like, explains Nancy Mace, whatever. It's wild to think we're coming to a place where Marco Rubio like could be like a real contender for Trump's VP, but that's what Caputo thinks, and that's why Marco voted.
He's gonna
against it.
move. They're gonna make him move.
Yeah, they
That's it.
re-register somewhere
That'd be
else.
the biggest power move ever.
If people want to
Right.
hear drunk Tim on a podcast, I think it's the first time I've been like actually drunk. I did Love It or Leave It over the weekend, and
Do you have to be drunk on that show?
No, you don't. But I just had it like I booked it like across from some other obligations, and I happened to be partying, and so I was like a comedy podcast. So I was like, whatever, I'll let it a little loose. And about an hour in, we got into the Marco Rubio thing. It's pretty funny. People should check it out. But like the best case scenario, the only thing that would make me have a single iota of a positive feeling towards Donald Trump that I could imagine would be for Donald Trump to get him to the final 2, get him to resign and move, and then choose somebody else. I mean, like that would really
so good.
that would almost be enough to win me over. I mean, that like the humiliation of Marco at that level is really appetizing. That's all.
Yeah,
That's all
my
I'm gonna
money's
say.
still on JD.
Yeah.
But all right. So do
I
you
don't know,
guys have
man.
any?
Marco's a good choice.
Marco is a good choice.
The more I thought about it, like he brings so many of the normies on side, and Trump is old, and the extent to which the Republican Party would salivate, like the establishment, to get somebody like Marco back, and like right the ship through him.
it would guarantee that Chris Christie would come off the bench and endorse Biden.
Can somebody play that clip for Donald Trump though? If maybe our Florida man can send this over to the Trump team, because Sarah is exactly right. The establishment, all the people that Donald Trump hate that have secretly talked shit about him behind his back, would be so excited if they picked Marco, because they would see their path out. They would see their path out. They'd be like, as soon as we're done with this guy, either this November or in 3 years, we'll start to kick him to the curb. We have our, you've anointed you've given Marco this establishment neocon, the MAGA fairy dust by picking him. Ugh, people would be so excited. Donald Trump cannot let these people be that happy.
This is the reason I actually think that Marco doesn't work for him, because Marco is a talented enough politician that he could, in theory, assemble his own independent power base.
Nah.
J.D. Vance is not.
Nah.
All right. In Columbia, just a few miles north of me in town, been a bunch of protests, and I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts about it? It all seems very bad to me. I think Bill Kristol had an excellent newsletter earlier this week saying that, like, we're against mobs, right?
Yep.
Mobs are bad. And I don't think we need to send the National Guard over to Columbia up in Harlem. But, I'm Tim,
The free speech crowd is really itching to jail people. I'm just like, this whole thing has really exposed them. It's like there's like jail the protesters, the professors, and we got to take away the visas from the students that are participating and all this. I'm like, okay, this is bad. These protests, Brad, Jonathan Chait's thing was right about how all you have to do is read what the Students for Palestine say in their own manifestos, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And they're like, they basically want to kill Jews. Like, it's. I mean,
They
so
don't
not.
like
I don't
Jews.
think that everybody at the protest necessarily thinks that or reads the manifesto or whatever, but that's what the leaders of these groups say. I think those are obviously outside agitators.
Say what you want, but at least it's an ethos.
Yeah, I guess. But like they've shut down the campus. These people don't really know what they're doing. The heads of these universities. They're like, we're going remote now, and then it's like the teachers are out there and they're masked. The whole thing it's like what is that? Why are you in a mask? There's a Dave Weigel has a good article on this yesterday, and they like put out a statement. They're like, it's a statement. Well, partly our privacy, but also it's a statement against Joe Biden not taking COVID seriously. To me, I kind of like want to run that as an ad if I'm Joe Biden. It's like these campus kids that you think are for me, they're actually protesting me, and they think that we should be wearing masks outdoors again. And I don't want to do that. I don't think you should mask outdoors anymore, and I think these guys are a little extreme. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message. I think that'd be a pretty effective ad. So I don't know. They're bad. Some of the stuff is very overwrought. We talked about this yesterday on the podcast. With Frank Bruni. You know, there are also a lot of campuses where this is not happening. I liked the poll that came out of the Harvard youth poll, the good one, not the Mark Penn one, where they like asked people to rank the issues they cared about. And this was like 13th. Like it is a loud minority. It is a Twitter and campus protests are not real life type thing. I think that there are a lot of campuses where this is not happening, but there are some campuses where it's really real and the threats against Jewish kids are bad. So like all of that stuff is true at once.
Can we talk briefly about and we had a piece on this in the site. There's been this clamor in like conservative world, you know, why Joe Biden is being silent. Where is Joe Biden? And the answer is like Biden keeps talking about this and he's saying all the right things and saying that this is anti-Semitic nonsense.
I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm going to let you go next. But I have one more rant on this because I've been looking for a vehicle to make this rant. Joe Biden put out a great statement on this, which Andrew Egger and Bill put in the newsletter, which people can go read, condemning the anti-Semitic protests. Then he was asked on a rope line about this. And he says, like, yes, I condemn the protesters. And then he's like, and I also think we should condemn people that are not taking seriously the human rights violations that are happening in Palestine. And he's like trying to keep talking, but then they keep shouting at him and asking another question, and he answers another question. And so there are a bunch of people on Twitter, a bunch of the conservatives out there were like, this is Joe Biden's, there are very good people very fine people on each side moment. And I was like, do you guys not understand the definition of words? Yeah. I was like, do you not understand the definition of words? Like, okay, you could say it's a false equivalence or whatever, which, you know, we could all debate whether that was a both sidesing or a false equivalence, but like, there is a category difference between saying there are great good people in both of these groups, and I condemn both of these groups. Like it's like that's not the same. Joe Biden did not go out there and say, "I love the very fine people shouting anti-Semitic bile at Columbia." That's not what he said. So anyway, that annoyed me.
Yeah, there's also just the obvious thing, and JBL makes this point, and now it's a point I think about all the time, which is, you know, the anti-Semitic folks in Charlottesville, they were all Trumpers. And the people protesting, doing these horrible things on campus, they hate Joe Biden. They're protesting Joe Biden, right? And so, like, the people who stormed the Capitol had Trump flags. The people who are storming campus offices are protesting Joe Biden and also weirdly wearing masks to protest him. And I will say, though, I really resist, and I'm not sure why. I think it's because the entire DC media corps and everybody else like all went to these elite schools. Like the extent to which we think about what is happening on these elite campuses, I'm just like, I even come out of this world. Like my first job was sort of like campus conservative stuff. But it is like silly how much, like what is happening is bad and it should be condemned. But like, it's weird how the campus stuff, because it's been this way the whole time, gets this like wall to wall coverage. But it is, I mean, I just think there's like a weird obsession with it. When it's this like small minority of people at this small place. Now they are places with a lot of, they are churning out people who have power, which is I think why people care, right? Is the people who are the most engaged in media have this, but like the school should just shut these things down. Everybody is like when it starts to get violent, there's no way it doesn't violate all your codes of conduct when there's their manifesto is about killing Jews. And like, why don't you try teaching these kids something like about how to have a productive dialogue about this? Like, there are a million legitimate points for a lot of different people to make, and you should have them talk those things through. And it would be nice if the schools took a little bit of ownership around, like, educating kids or
I would like to give you my theory on how to fix all of this.
Great.
It's called the C curve. Any school where the median grade in every single class is curved to a C cannot, by definition, have any sort of campus protests because nobody has fucking time.
Yeah.
It turns it into a war of all against all, and everybody spends every waking minute of their lives in the library studying. The idea that you in college have time to protest or drink or get high or smile or go out into the sunlight, those things are not supposed to happen in college. You're supposed to study and work and try to beat the C curve.
I have a different proposal. How about we just appreciate the bounty of the free market system where people have a lot of choices of schools? Like the Free Press Bar thing has an article today that's like, some kids are not choosing these elite campuses anymore and they're going south and they think that's a big own. And I'm kind of like, great, cool.
Yeah.
Fewer
nice
kids applying to Columbia.
Warm.
Cool. Like, this is awesome. Like, this is the bound of the American system. I live 3 blocks from Loyola. I drive by it, walk by it every day. Nobody's occupying Loyola New Orleans' campus. Nobody is shouting anti-Semitic bile at anyone. There are no trash can fires. There are schools like that all across this great land. We have a great higher education system.
I bet at good old Kenyon College, they're holding just student forums and letting everybody talk, and work it out.
Johns Hopkins, they're all in their underground library studying. Nobody even knows that there's a war happening there.
I do agree with JVL that directionally, never on the specifics, but directionally, that the idea of just like everyone should have more homework. Like, people have too much time on their hands. And we're raising too many kids to like be protesters and not enough of them to think critically and be able to like.
Well, that's not new. This goes back to the late.
No, but I liked your triad where you like demanded of yourself to take the opposite side. Like the idea of having a forum where you take people, make them make the opposite argument, like. Which isn't to say these aren't like deeply held moral issues for everybody, but like we should be the job of these educators is to help them channel these things productively and to turn them into like literally teachable moments. It isn't anyway.
No, and I just want to say one thing on this, just to be earnest. Just to be earnest, protest, great. I do not share JL's view. You should be doing homework all the time. If you want to protest the hunger and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, great. There are a lot of humanitarian crises out there. That is one. It's very bad. I agree with that. There's serious things. Protest it. Go protest. Like, there's this thing called the protester's dilemma, where it's like, we need to protest in these really ostentatious ways because it gets us attention. It's kind of like, is this good attention? Do you guys feel like you have good attention? There's Joe.
Yeah,
Biden
are you advancing
events.
Your position right now?
The UN is right there in New York. Go stand out the UN with a sign that has a picture of starving babies and spend a couple hours out there and do good and sign petitions. That's great. But like, we don't fucking try to scare kids in yarmulkes, all right? It's fucking bullshit.
All right. Good show, long show. I'm very proud of myself for making it through.
Same.
Good to see
you
guys.
Watched he just was like drinking cough syrup. Have you seen that? You got
Is that a tincture?
I was telling these guys it's a 12-hour cough relief, extra super duper special, and the directions say in bold print, do not take more than 20 milliliters in any 24-hour period. And I've just been doing shots of this like it's fucking Patron just to get through this show. So
things that you don't actually do. Take shots of Patron. I do hope that, especially because we got a show in Philly next week. Big show in Philly. If you guys are out, if you're anywhere in that tri-state area, come out and see us.
I'm so excited. What are we gonna do? What are the three of us gonna do in Philly? We need to do one Philly thing with the three of us. What do you want to do? Do you want to go to the new Allen Iverson statue? They just put up a statue
I would
for
like to
the
do that.
answer.
Okay, we're gonna have to vote. Let's vote privately. Cheese steak is good too.
Okay. Bye.
All right, we'll see you guys later.